These are some of the great men who were responsible for our knowledge of plants and of medicines and how plants were used as medicines. There were further qualities were thought to develop from plants in later years, and the way plants were used as medicine, it goes into enormous different factors. Alteratives, which change things, cephalics, which were bits of certain parts of the body, abstractives, which made you vomit or purged you, and so on. Adductive, which induced, made you produce milk or have your periods or things like that. But these were all the sort of concepts which were brought about because they had no idea about how medicines worked, how the body worked, or what sickness was. The most important of them all was the doctrine of signatures. And Giovanni Battista Porta's book, Phytognometer, in 1588, was perhaps the most influential. But the doctrine of signatures did exist way back 2,000 years ago. And that said that the Creator, when he put all the plants on the planet for mankind's use, had signed them, and you had just to read the signs to be able to tell what they were for. And for example, orchids were called orchis because they had tubers which looked like testicles, and therefore they were good for aphrodisiacs. Or, I'm afraid they were very non-PC. If you're a woman and you ate the new tuber of the orchid, this year's tuber, you had boy babies, and if you ate the old tubers, you had girl babies, second-class babies, and so on. And then dactyriza with the shape of a hand for hand disorders. And there were quite a lot of plants which were good against scorpions, and this is Giovanni Battista Porta showing Doronicum and aconite, good against scorpion bites, and this is an aconite root showing its resemblance to a scorpion, although it doesn't have a curly tail, and that was said to be a cure for scorpion bites. Anyone any idea what happens if you eat an aconite root and you've been poisoned by a scorpion? You die very quickly. One of the things about the doctrine of signatures was it said that one poison was an antidote to another. So if you thought you'd been poisoned, you ate another poison, and that cured you. This is again Giovanni Battista showing calendula and Doronicum and an eye, and the central pupil and the radiating iris indicated that the Creator had put it upon this planet for treatment of eye disorders. And then there are other plants like pulmonaria, and it has a leaf, like a mottled leaf, looking vaguely like the cut surface of a lung, and as such was used for pulmonary disorders. And when Linnaeus introduced the binomial system of nomenclature in 1753, he called it pulmonaria, which was the name which had been used in medical books and herbals since the beginning of time, or for 2,000 years. Now, they weren't completely stupid, and while they did sometimes recommend drinking a tea made from the leaf of pulmonaria for the treatment of pleurisy and painful chest and things like that, on the whole they made it into a hot poultice and they put it on the painful area, and that did have a curative effect. They weren't completely stupid, and of course the placebo effect of a plant given to you by the Creator for the treatment of lung disorders was very much better than a hot water bottle given to you by Boots the chemist. Hepatica, here we have Hepatica nobilis, and its leaves have three lobes, and the liver has 3 lobes, and so was used for hepatic disorders. And some of you will remember, not many of you I'm afraid, that liverishness used to be a very common complaint, and people used to take liver pills. And Mr. Carter's liver pills in the 1970s, 60s, 70s, you could still buy across the counter for feeling liverish. I have no idea what liverishness was. There was no such thing as liver function tests. Most people only knew there was something wrong with their liver when they went jaundiced. But in the 1880s in Canada, liverishness was a big market, and people harvested hundreds of tons of leaf of Hepatica nobilis and made it into liver tonics. By that time, there was a lot of people writing papers on this and that, and they observed that people who took this liver tonic had a high instance of developing jaundice shortly afterwards. because they hadn't realized that the creator had signed this plant to indicate it was bad for the liver. Good, you're getting the point, are you? That I'm not a great favourite of this. Scrophularia nodosa. Scrophularia nodosa, nodosa because it has nodular roots, scrophularia because it was said to be a treatment for scrofula. Scrofula was this condition where you got tuberculosis and other mycobacterial infections of your lymph nodes in your neck, and you had these great glands in your neck which looked like pink fir apple, which discharged pus, and you gradually wasted away with anemia and amyloidosis as a secondary from TB, and you died. And I think was the origin also of the vampire myth, because you had two little holes in your neck and you were a young lady and you were gradually wasting away and dying with anemia from your TB. They thought it was the vampires, but actually it was the scrofula. And because it has these roots like that, it was thought to be a cure for scrofula. It was also called figwort in English, and wort, as you know, is an old medieval word for a plant. And what was a fig? Hands up, anyone knows what a fig is? You're not allowed to just go to sleep here. Does Shakespeare ever use the word, the expression like a fig on you, sir? I think he does, doesn't he? A fig was a hemorrhoid. Piles. And here is, excuse me, is a anal opening with two little red protuberant things, which is the flower of figwort. It looks like a pile, all right? And so it was thought to be good for piles. And Culpeper, I think, says you can carry it in your pocket because he believed in transmutation of cells and things like that. And just like Bach's flower remedies, the magic properties of this plant in curing piles could be transmuted from your pocket into your back end and cure your piles. I think he did say that if it didn't work, try applying it to the fundament. But there we are. Scrofula was also the king's evil. And being touched by a king would cure you of your scrofula. And there was a certain king who touched 4,000 people in one afternoon. And afterwards they all looked at each other and said, how was that for you, my dear? And King Henry II abolished the practice as a silly superstition. Inula Helenum, Inula, after Helen of Troy, who carried a bunch of these on her exile, but has lovely scratchy leaves, and Culpeper says it's good for the scab and the itch, meaning dermatitis. And there were certain plants which were really just magic. And this lovely blue flower on the left, the chaste plant, or monk's pepper, was carried in the pockets of nuns to keep their minds pure and not thinking of men. The monks were a bit more practical, and they ground up the seed heads and sprinkled it on their food, so stop them having carnal thoughts and jumping on each other. Certain bishops in Boston should perhaps be advised to take it. Anyway, it's still available as a herbal remedy, and it's approved in Germany. It does cause funny things to happen to your prolactin levels in your body, but double-blind trials don't show that it's any good for premenstrual tension or menopausal flushing. But I think if you take it for several years, your once menopausal flushing will disappear. However, I'm sorry about this, but whatever, it still grows out. You're a cynic like me, I like it, it's good. You don't have to believe a word I say. This is like the labels on the Hippocratic plane tree, all right? But I just tell you my views on the matter. But it still grows outside the monasteries of France. This is a much more interesting plant. This is Aristolochia clematitis, which is a birthwort, a birth plant. And it helped induce labour. It's a poison. It makes the uterine muscle contract. It also makes the immature uterus contract, and was given to people 3 months pregnant as an abortifacient. And this too grows outside the monasteries of France. This was their contraceptive pill, and this was their morning after pill.